roll call, please? Yes. Before I do the roll call, I'm going to ask our city attorney to report out.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, the City Council had a special closed session meeting at 6:30 PM tonight. The council was in closed session to confer with their labor negotiator. While they had a full and thorough briefing, no reportable action was taken tonight. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Okay. May we have the roll call, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Chavez.
Here.
Councilmember Chen.
Here.
Councilmember Yu.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Mann.
Here.
Mayor Sternquist.
Here. Okay, we move to our invocation. Pastor Kelty, Community of Christ Church will provide the invocation. Community of Christ is located at 5851 Temple City Boulevard. Services are on Sunday mornings at 10:30 a.m. and all are welcome. Pastor Kelty?
Let us pray. Our divine Creator, we thank you for this world that you have created. We thank you for this beautiful but hot day that provides light for all of us. We thank you that we're able to live in this community and enjoy its benefits and what it has to offer for all of us. We therefore come into your presence in prayer this evening to ask your blessings upon us all as we here do those things that make this a better city. We may continue to share the blessings you've given to us, to those around us, through this city and its communities. We would remember especially this city council and their staff, that they may have your wisdom with them to seek to do those things that make this an even better community. We know not what the future may bring. We're asked, dear Creator, that in all we do this evening, not just for this generation, for those generations who are to come after us, they may look back and tell us, a good job, well done. That when they look for the future, they may do so with a hope, anticipation, and eagerness, and a positive outlook because of the building upon which we have done here today. May indeed, dear Creator, make a better world for tomorrow. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we move to ceremonial items, and tonight I am proud to bring two of Judy Chu's Artistic Discovery Contest winners to the council meeting to be recognized this evening. Each year, Congresswoman Chu holds her annual congressional art competition for high school students living within the 28th Congressional District. This competition provides an exciting opportunity to encourage and recognize the rich artistic talents of our country's youth. There were over 220 submissions this year, and two students from Temple City High School placed in the top 10. First of all, we have Mei Tong Lu, 10th grader at Temple City High School, and she received honorable mention, and the title of her artwork was Frail. Do we have a picture of that by any chance? And while Peggy's looking for that, we have Janice Yang. She's in 12th grade from Temple City High School, and she is the first place winner, and the title of her artwork is Under the Same Sun. Janice's artwork will be displayed in the U.S. Capitol for the entire year. She will be flown to Washington, D.C., along with one other guest to participate in the ribbon-cutting ceremony and meet with over 300 other art competition winners from around the country. Congratulations to Mei Tong and to Janice. So would you please come up to the front? And council, will you join me?
Mayor, this is Mei Tong's Frail.
Mei Tong.
Joanna?
Mayor, and this is Janice's Under the Sun.
Oh my goodness, beautiful. Thank you, Katie.
I'll stand in for Jerry today.
Adam, do you think we could get a copy and place it in City Hall of their work?
I'm sure we can reach out and see if that's a possibility. All right, ready? Pick up the 1, 2, 3. One, two, and three. Okay,
Thank you. Congratulations. Beautiful work.
Thank you.
And I'd like to thank Jerry Jambazian, who took those pictures. So,
Madam Mayor, if I may add,
yes.
the summer after graduating from Temple City High School, I had the fortune of interning at Capitol Hill in Washington DC. And each day when I walked through that tunnel
You
underneath
see him.
the house, I believe it was the Rayburn office building to the Cannon office building to the Capitol, I saw the artwork lined up. So it's a tremendous honor. I think this is a fantastic job.
And I believe this is the second time we've had a first place winner.
I think
Last year we had some.
Last year was-
also Temple City High senior that placed first.
Yes.
Yeah, so Temple City High is on a roll. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Great job.
Ladies, you don't have to stay. You can go if you have lots of other things to do, but you're welcome to stay if you want. But okay. All right. We move to item 6, public comments on items not listed on the agenda. City Council will now hear them. Is there anyone who would like to speak? Okay, I'm going to close public comment. We move to item 7, the consent calendar. All consent calendar items may be approved in a single motion as recommended unless removed for further discussion. Is there anyone who wants to speak on an agenda item? Nope.
Motion to approve consent calendar?
Second?
Okay, it's been motioned and seconded. May we have a roll call, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Chavez?
Yes.
Councilmember Chen?
Yes.
Councilmember Yu?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mann?
Yes.
Mayor Sternquist?
Yes. Okay, we move to item 8, public hearing. There is none. Unfinished business, none. Item 10, Live Oak Park Playground sign selection. The city council is requested to select the Live Oak Park Playground design. Mr. Cook?
Thank you, Mayor Sternquist and members of the council. While Mr. Matsumoto and Ryan get ready, this has come back to you after some extensive deliberation by the ad hoc, which was yourself and Mayor Pro Tem Mann. So we think there is a recommended structure and sign that will be presented to the council tonight to move forward. So with that, whenever Mr. Matsumoto is ready, I'll turn it over to him.
Yes, thank you, City Manager Cook. Good evening, Mayor Sternquist and members of the City Council. So tonight we do have 3 options to present to the City Council for sign concepts, designs for the Live Oak Park Playground. As Mr. Cook had mentioned, the ad hoc committee did meet twice to review the different designs and come up with different design inspirations for SWA, our landscape architect, to work on. So both Ryan McKay, who's here today, and their designer Paul Webby produced these designs for the ad hoc to review, which you'll see all 3 of tonight. And the ad hoc did come to a consensus with one they do have as a recommendation to the City Council. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. McKay for the presentation.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and City Council.
Good evening.
I'll wait for the presentation to show up, but it's good to see you again. We had a really fruitful couple meetings with the ad hoc, and excited to share the design we'd hope to get approved tonight. Right, so as a refresher, I was back here in December of last year, where I presented two options. Neither of the designs were approved, but what was approved was the signage content, which was the sign was meant to be a dedication feature, highlighting the history and the site design. And there was kind of no need for branding or a naming element like AstroPlay. We also decided on where the sign would be located at the north entry of the playground. The sign would be illuminated, and that we'd work within a $40K budget to get it fabricated and fully installed. So this was the signage intent with the branding removed, honor the site history, education, explore the playground, and dedication to council and the design team. The sign location for refresher, just in the north there, with the pink dot. So when we met with the ad hoc, we presented several different design options, but we kind of started back and looked at different in situ signage examples just to prime the group on the possibilities and kind of gauge where we are and how traditional of a sign to more contemporary or exploratory we want to go with the sign. So those are some options, and then we also just refreshed what the signage inspiration was, and the inspiration of the playground being space. Next slide. So we presented in our first meeting kind of 3 different options on a scale bar of traditional to more dynamic signs, and we landed in creating 3 different options that we would build 3D renderings of. Of the 3, we wanted one that was kind of this mid traditional, a little bit more dynamic, and then also explore that rocket design, but something that wasn't as dated to the 1960s kind of rocket motif we had presented last. So this is the first option, the traditional panel design, pulling colors and inspiration from the built forms of the playground equipment itself. They were double-sided and stands about 6 feet tall. You go to the next one. So these are both sides of the sign, pulling the hexagon shapes from the play structures. The second option was the realistic rocket design, a thin metal panel rocket that looks more reminiscent of more current rocket structures and other details that were added to really make the presence that it was a rocket. Again, double-sided with all of the same content on it. And then the third, and what was the group's favorite, was this idea of a planetary pedestal design. So this was something that was to bring down the scale of the sign to be more interactive for children. A 2-piece element, the first piece being the history and dedication portion, the taller element on the left, and then a smaller one that actually had the map of the playground with what all the different elements are that kids could look at the map and then look at the playground in the distance and kind of find those as an interactive element at their height. So this was the preferred option by the group. And we also understand we want this illuminated, so in the next slide, so those are the 3 rendered. In the next slide, we know we also want it illuminated, and for this option, we really like the idea of illuminating it from its base. There's plenty of overhead light from the adjacent light posts near it that'll illuminate the top and still be legible, but just to create this like glowing halo at the bottom was a really nice feature and element to the playground.
So you're saying there will be additional lighting coming down?
Yes, so there's a reveal at the bottom that would be like an LED strip light that illuminates just the bottom of it, that's pointed down at the ground, just to lighten the structure, the presence there. And then same signage content, but just larger scale here for you to see and read at your leisure, what the signs, the actual text on them and the graphic are at larger scale. I welcome any comments or questions. Thank you.
I do have one more question. So the color that we see is what was proposed?
Correct, yes.
Okay, we're going to go to council comments. We'll start with you. Councilmember Yu, did you have anything else?
No, those are my questions.
Okay. Councilmember Chen? Councilmember Chavez?
No questions. Thank
No
you.
questions?
No, I love it.
Okay.
I'm ready.
Mayor Pro Tem Mann, anything?
No questions.
No questions? Okay. I'm going to open public comment. Would anyone like to speak on the item? Nope. Close public comment. And final questions. We're going to start with Councilmember Chavez.
No questions. I just want to congratulate you and William. I think you guys did a good job with the design team. When I first started reading the report, I saw the first two and I thought, but then the third one really hit home, I think. It's a nice difference, nice option. I like the lighting. I just like everything about it, so I think it's going to work out well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember Chen?
Given my profession, my day job, I'm always concerned about graffiti or vandalism, but I think based on the options as provided, I thought option C is wonderful.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Yu, any final comments?
I thought they looked really nice, and thank you for that. But actually, Councilmember Chen's question brought up a good question. What are we doing if there's somebody came and attacked the place? Because vertical surfaces, that's always that danger, right? So what's our option? Just repaint it over?
Yeah, with any kind of sign, I mean, there's graffiti coatings that you can put on, but they're not the most reliable. The repainting or having to refinish the sign element would be for any of the options.
But I imagine you probably needed some kind of graffiti, anti-graffiti coating on it, right?
We could look at that as
Yeah.
an option. I don't know if you've had success with any in the past, Adam, but they're kind of hard to personally maintain.
Yeah, so I think one of the benefits with this design and working with Ryan's team at SW is that we'll be able to retain the graphics and all the imagery. So if there is a need to actually, let's say we can't actually remove the graffiti with, cleaning it or wiping down, we could probably do a reprint of the graphics and do overlays on top of it. These structures are going to be sheet metal powder coated. So that in itself is a little bit more resilient than just painting. But because we do we'll retain the graphics, there is that option if it's beyond repair that we can probably just do reprinting and overlays on top of it. Potentially.
You may want to consider actually just painting it because you don't have to repowder coating. It's kind of rough.
It's basically a one option, one stop, or
Yes.
one-time option, and then once it gets damaged, you would have to kind of redo the entire structure.
That's why my experience is sometimes we just paint the thing, even though it's not as good, but you can always repaint it.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. Can I have a motion for this item?
Make a motion that we approve option C and authorize city manager to execute an agreement for production and installation of the selected sign in an amount not to exceed $40,000.
A second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. May I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Chavez?
Yes.
Councilmember Chen?
Yes.
Councilmember Yu?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mann?
Yes.
Mayor Sternquist?
Yes. Okay. Excited to see that
Yeah.
progress. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
Good to see
Thank you.
Okay. We have an update from our city manager.
Thank you, Mayor Sternquist and members of the council. I'm going to defer my time to community development staff and Andrew Cohen, our associate planner, to talk about just something that's going to be coming back to the council. You may remember, it's been a while, but we passed the SB 9 ordinance that had some what we thought met some of the state's guidelines. We did receive a letter from the state's Housing and Community Development Department stating that they were concerned about some of the elements of the ordinance and that it created governmental constraints which were counter to some of the housing goals and law and codes of the state. So what we did is we went and used to work with the state of California, and that's what we want to do. We want to work with the state in this process. We don't want to run counter to them, but we also want to keep the character and nature as we presented to you in the last housing report. We want to keep the character and nature of the community as much as we can while still meeting all of these housing goals. So want to give you just a heads up, during the late summer, we'll be coming to you with a revised ordinance, but want to give you kind of a heads up. We have already provided a heads up to the Planning Commission, some of the analysis and some of the recommendations. So for about the next 5 or 10 minutes, Andrew will go over that.
Thank you, Brian.
And because this will be coming back to you, if you have any questions later, during any other one-on-one discussion, please just discuss those with me if you wouldn't mind. Thank you.
So I'm a little confused. This is not a question and answer session then. This is like if we were just getting a report.
Right, yeah,
rather
we'd
from the city
really
manager.
prefer that tonight be a night to soak in what you're going to hear. And then when you speak with Brian later on in this week, as I know most of you do on a weekly basis, any questions come up, ask kind of offline, one-on-one at that point, so that when the item comes to you as an agendized public hearing, there's no claim that you've prejudged it or anything on that line. Thank you.
So just listen and learn. Okay.
Thank you, City Council. Good evening. I'm going to just begin the presentation by just giving you a little bit of a background just to refresh your memory on what SB 9 is. So back in 2021, the state of California passed a law that would allow you to take a single-family property and subdivide it, and the end result could be that you could have 4 units on a property that originally would have only had 1 unit. So the city responded to that new law and adopted its own SB 9 ordinance that was tailored to finding ways to minimize the impacts that these new types of developments would have on our existing single-family neighborhoods. So that was the intent behind the ordinance that we passed back in 2022. After we adopted that ordinance, HCD, which is the state agency that oversees all of these things, reached out to the city and said that they had concerns about our ordinance, specifically that there were some things in it that they felt were not complying with the law, and they asked us to immediately make changes to our ordinance to correspond with that. And then in addition to that, they asked us to do what we call a constraints analysis, where we could do a more thorough review of our ordinance and see if there's anything else in the ordinance that could be considered to be a constraint, meaning that it would get in the way of someone wanting to develop a property, that would make it difficult for people to develop these units. So in 2022, we adopted a zoning code amendment that addressed specifically the items that they asked us to change immediately. And if you're wondering what those were things clarifying the number of dwelling units that are allowed on a property, the maximum unit size, and modifying the open space requirements that we had. So those are like the immediate things they wanted us to take care of right away. Then we hired a consultant who reviewed our ordinance more thoroughly, and they have provided us with some recommendations to further revise the ordinance. Just to give you a little bit of a summary, up to now, we haven't had any SB 9 applications. And if you look at statewide, there have been very few SB 9 units statewide. So it's not just Temple City, it's just there's not really a lot of demand for these types of developments. And that's primarily because ADUs are so popular. As you know, here in Temple City, they're very popular, and statewide as well. There were 10 provisions in our ordinance that the consultant found to be a constraint. And so those are the things that we're going to go into tonight. Before I do that, though, I just do want to mention to you that it's not simply our ordinance that is preventing the building of these units. There's a lot of other factors that you need to keep in mind. One of them is the existing lot sizes and the configurations of lots, which can make it difficult. And then the fact that ADUs are just a lot easier to get approved and don't have as many restrictions. So people tend to gravitate towards those. And our consultant also feels that there's probably a certain level of lack of awareness amongst developers and community members that there is this option for SB 9 development. And then lastly, there have been lawsuits at the state level just addressing the legality of SB 9 that still kind of have a cloud hanging over it. So with that, I'm going to go quickly just through each of the items. Like I mentioned, there's about 10 of them that they want to see us revise. So the first one is our provision about the minimum unit size. We currently say that you have to have at least 500 square feet for one of these SB 9 units, and the consultant is saying that that's a constraint and that we should get away with that and just move away from that and follow just the building code. Building code allows units as small as 190 square feet. So this is something that we already have said in our housing element we were going to do just in general, that we're going to get away from establishing minimum unit sizes. So this is not very controversial. The second one is the third floor requirement. SB 9 allows these units to be 3 stories, and immediately we were concerned about what impact that would have on single-family neighborhoods, which normally are only allowed to have 2 stories. So one workaround that we put into our ordinance is that if you're going to do a 3rd story on an SB 9 unit, it needs to be subterranean. It needs to be underground so that it doesn't make the building too high. And the consultant and HCD want us to do away with this requirement and allow 3-story SB 9 units.
Without the underground.
What's that?
Without the underground.
Without the underground, that they should be allowed to build 3-story above ground. Yeah.
Obviously, are we allowed to ask questions? City Attorney, because it's not.
We prefer to have them really limited and just have this be sort of a receipt of information with questions to Brian or to the team later on this week.
Okay.
It's a really good chance to just kind of let him go through everything that's in front of us and, like I said, soak it in and then ask those questions offline.
Okay, got it.
The next item is the on-site parking. Now, in our ordinance, we currently prohibit that there be any on-site parking. And if a person is taking an existing lot that has a garage or a driveway, if they want to do SB 9 development on that site, we require them to remove the garage and remove the driveway. And furthermore, that the tenants of that site would not be eligible for overnight parking permits. So essentially, a person living on an SB 9 site would have to be someone that uses public transit, or some other means of transportation. The recommendation from the consultant is that this is a constraint and that we need to remove that and allow at the very least, allow existing on-site parking to remain on a site and allow the tenants of those units to get overnight parking permits. And just generally speaking, they would like us to look at finding ways to just clearly define what appropriate on-site parking would be for a property that has SB 9 units on it. The next item is the affordability mandate. So our ordinance requires that the SB 9 units be occupied by low or very low income households. And the consultant also believes that this is a constraint, making it more expensive and making it less likely that someone would want to do a development like this. So they want us to eliminate that, and we could consider maybe providing incentives for developers to make the units affordable rather than mandating it. The other requirement that we have is an environmental thing. We say that any units built on these sites need to be LEED Platinum, which is a very high level of environmentally friendly construction. The consultant believes that this is also a constraint and that we should just simply rely on the Cal Green Code to make sure that the units are built according to environmentally friendly standards. And then the next one is the restricting of appeals. So right now, our ordinance will allow if anybody from the public to appeal a decision on an SB 9 unit. And the consultant's view is that since SB 9 projects are supposed to be ministerial, meaning there's no discretion on the part of the city, that we really shouldn't be allowing any kind of appeals on these. It's either it's approved or it's not. And the idea is that this would prevent unnecessary delays. Maybe someone in the community were to appeal a decision and just cause the construction of that project to be delayed. The idea is to get these projects built as quickly as possible. The next one is kind of not really substantial. This is mainly just clarifying the language to make it very clear to people. So sometimes on an SB9 unit, someone may want to build an ADU in addition to the SB9 unit. And we want to clarify that the ADU will be considered a unit and then counted towards the total number of units that would be allowed on the site. And this diagram just kind of shows different permutations of that, different scenarios. And then the last one is just mainly an education and a communication side. They would like us to provide more clear handouts to the community to help them understand what their options are. And then also make sure that our staff, the planning staff, the building staff, is up to date on what the requirements are of the law, and so that we can clearly communicate that to people. And with that, our next steps is we're going to submit this analysis to HCD, which is going to be in response to their request that we do the analysis. So we're going to present that to them, and then the expectation is that at some point in the near future, we will come back to you with a recommended amendment to the code that addresses these items. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Andrew. On top of that, so that what we were required to do per the direction from HCD was to provide this constraints analysis. Then that should be somewhat of an iterative process still between us and HCD, and then coming back to you after that iterative process between us and HCD. It's not de facto process, but it should be an iterative process between us and HCD. But we were obligated to provide this constraints analysis to HCD, which we will be doing shortly.
Can I ask a question about that process, not the presentation? So this constraints analysis.
Sure.
So you said this was required by HCD.
Yes.
Does the requirement compel us to do the constraint analysis through a consultant, or was that our choice?
Yes, it was, we agreed in the initial consultations with HCD, the city agreed that we would make certain changes and then hire a consultant to do this analysis, so that it was not city staff doing it. It was somebody who came in from the outside to give it a fresh look. And as you see tonight, they certainly found some things that they thought would be subject to HCD wanting to see changes. So that's why it was done consultant-wise.
Aren't those the same things that HCD would recommend? Why do we have to hire consultants? Why can't they just tell us what they want or don't want?
Because if they told us, we would continue to argue back and forth. And so when we reached an agreement with them after year one and a half of having the ordinance in place, and they were taking issue with things, what we asked was to make those early revisions and then go through this process. I'm certain that there are things that HCD would think were problematic that the consultant said were not. But the consultant did an independent analysis, and so that independent analysis, both HCD and the city agreed, would be a good way to really gauge the ordinance.
It seems to me another new way of the legislature creating a way for local governments to spend more money needlessly.
Yeah, I agree with that. But the question really is that is this final that will be turned in? So, typically when we hire a consultant, any agency, the agency will have to agree with the findings or have to somehow, they issue a draft and an agency will review it and agree or disagree or make recommendations for the consultant to consider. What stage are we at?
Right now, we're in the stage of just what we have as a draft constraints analysis.
So-
But this HCD asked us to do was to provide the third-party analysis of what they evaluated our constraints to, or what they evaluated to be constraints.
So we have no input into this? Or can we have input into this is really my question.
The input that staff will have is when this is provided to HCD, staff will have the ability to explain or discuss with HCD if staff disagrees with the findings. For example, the incredibly low number of SB 9 projects statewide and the even lower percentage-wise in the West San Gabriel Valley may go to show that governmental constraints are not the issue, that market constraints and, as Steph said, the popularity of ADUs are really what is causing SB 9 units to not be built. That's a factual or at least fact-based argument. Those are the kinds of discussions that will be had over time, and why, as the city manager said, it's sort of an iterative process with HCD to go back and forth in writing a few times, have 1 or 2 Zoom meetings between staff and HCD, and then ultimately reach some kind of agreement on what would be in a cleanup ordinance that would go to the commission and then yourselves.
That's not my question. My question is how much input we can have, if any,
Into the consultant's report?
Yes.
The way that staff had left it with HCD was that they would allow for a truly independent report to be provided to us that we would give to HCD, so not one that we would then take issue with or sort of lead the consultant, which is why, again, there are findings there that I wish the consultant would not have made. I think that there are some things there that, just from a legal basis, I may disagree with, but we want to see where this leads in terms of the process. But yes, when we agreed with HCD, the agreement was we will let some time play out and hire an independent consultant to look at it without us doing it.
Consultant
Yes, sir.
through an RFP process?
I believe, yeah, we did, we went through an RFP process, yes.
Do you recall how much we paid for that?
I think it was $20,000.
And who is that?
Stage Crest, correct? Sage Crest.
I have a quick question, a general question. You made mention in the report, I believe, pending lawsuits. Greg, have we gotten an update on, one, where those lawsuits stand, and what, if any, effect will the outcome of those lawsuits have on what we're being, at least in my mind, forced to do?
Sure. There are lawsuits before the appellate courts right now. As the council knows, a trial court lawsuit has nothing to bind us, but at least if we get an appellate decision, it'll give us some guidance. As a charter city, Temple City has more freedom than a general law city would, and I know that at least one of the lawsuits specifically deals with the rights of charter cities. So we're watching them carefully, but as yet, there's really nothing to report. The trial courts have been mostly against the cities in these because
Against the cities and in favor of the
state legislature, because the state legislature has made consistent findings that the need for housing is a statewide concern, and under California law, statewide concerns trump charter cities' ability to regulate municipal concerns. So that's where they stand today. But again, those are the trial court decisions. When we get a good appellate court decision, even an appellate court decision that we don't like, but that is thoroughly reasoned, then I'll present that to you so that you know what's going on.
Greg, is the goal of SB 9 was to get more affordable housing or just more housing?
That's a very good question. And it's a good question because when SB 9 was going through the legislative process, there was a lot of talk about how SB 9 developments would increase the availability of affordable housing. After the fact, the reasoning in Sacramento has been, well, they didn't mean affordable housing as we all know that term. They meant that housing would simply become more affordable because more units would be built. And so, for example, the ordinance that you all adopted, that staff prepared, had affordability covenants. And those affordability covenants, through the staff report presented to you, were directly tied to legislative statements about how this will increase the supply of affordable units. That was considered a constraint, and so that's something that we will be working with HCD on. Overall, again, after the fact, and despite what was said in legislative session, it appears that SB 9 is simply to increase the number of units, and that truly number of units is HCD's driving concern. So that's where they stand.
Who is the author of SB 9 again?
Scott Wiener.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Figures.
Okay, well, thank you, Andrew.
Mayor, just
Yes.
one more thing. Do we know if this kind of, us being compelled to hire a consultant, is this consistent with what HCD is doing with other cities?
I will actually say this. Your staff did a great job and were very out front of this. HCD oftentimes did not give people the ability to hire a consultant to do this. They simply told them what to do. And so your staff had a very early ordinance. They had very thoughtful and rational and well fleshed out reasons for why they did what they did and why they asked you to adopt what you adopted. And because of that, I believe that HCD gave Temple City more leeway rather than less. There are cities in this area that were simply told, if you don't make changes, a lawsuit will be coming. Here, they allowed for this process to play out. So I attribute that to the professionalism of the people that you have working for you.
Okay. We're going to get an update from our city attorney.
Well, thank you. That was fun. So 2 weeks ago, I attended the League of California Cities City Attorney Conference in beautiful Burlingame, California. If you haven't been to the SFO Hyatt, it's a very nice place to spend a night. We were there for 2. I'll have quite a few different things over the next few weeks for you. Tonight, I just wanted to talk about some updates in sidewalk vendor regulation and enforcement.
You know, that's, I think the difference from public attorneys and private attorneys, where you stay.
Where we stay, yes. In 2018, as you all know, Senate Bill 946 began the process of requiring local jurisdictions to allow sidewalk vending. The intentions of that bill were good, but it led to the proliferation of unlawful sidewalk vending under the color of the law. We all know that outright bans are impermissible, and outright bans became even harder after the introduction of Senate Bill 972 in 2022 that gave additional levels of protection to what are called now compact mobile food operations, which are essentially roving sidewalk vendors. There's another pending bill, but I'm gonna wait on that for a second. I want to kind of go through some of the issues that have come up and then the new bill. Under both of the existing bills, sidewalk vending can no longer be subject to criminal penalty. So unlike a lot of other code enforcement, you can't go into potential criminal penalty to get people to stop. The sole form of enforcement is administrative fines, and if a person establishes an inability to pay, then the administrative fines have to be reduced by 80%, which is interesting because your escalating fine structure then gets knocked down by 80% as long as somebody shows that they themselves have a low ability to pay. Essentially, it knocks out your ability to really regulate at all. One of the problems with this that was, I think, unexpected by the legislature is that the vendors themselves are often victims of organized crime, including human trafficking. They're brought to the United States or transferred within the United States and they are generally unidentifiable to jurisdictions in law enforcement. They themselves are insolvent because they turn over their proceeds at the end of the day, and they're not in very good situations themselves. This was not what these bills were intended to provide. For the public, there's obviously the risk of foodborne illness, violence that we've all seen on the news at night, the attractive nuisance to children, blocked Americans with Disabilities Act access across sidewalks, pedestrians diverted into streets, and then obviously the detraction from businesses that are legitimate, whether sidewalk vending that's legitimate or traditional businesses that have taken on leases. There's a decrease in sales tax revenue, decrease in property tax revenue, and it detracts from the public's use and enjoyment of open space. All of this is complicated by a bill, Senate Bill 635, which is pending right now. Most significantly, Senate Bill 635 would prohibit cities and counties from contracting to enforce sidewalk vending rules or regulations, or contracting to cite, fine, or prosecute sidewalk vendors. Here in Temple City, we haven't had sidewalk vendors to the extent that you would need contracting. But if you think about places like a Pasadena, where they contract with the Intercon company for their parking tickets, that same company will also provide limited code enforcement and could do sidewalk vending, but now, under the anti-contracting provision, would force Pasadena or a city like it to use their own staff if they wanted to control sidewalk vending at all, even though it's a fairly low-level issue and an issue that tends to repeat itself, the kind of thing you would want to use contractors for.
Does the term sidewalk vending include vendors who are set up in our public parks?
Yes, it does.
So
Yes,
these
it
same
does.
rules apply?
The same rules apply. And this is the reason that this really hit me as the first thing to bring to you. This may be something that any of you individually want to reach out to your legislators about. Senate Bill 635 pending also prohibits screening for criminal histories, including violent crimes, gang crimes, and crimes against children, meaning that cities would be required to allow convicted violent criminals to operate in public rights-of-way, including potentially near schools and parks. You don't have the ability to screen to see who the vendors are that you are allowing, and given where you have to allow them to do their work, that could be problematic for the community.
And under current law, we do the screening?
Under current law, you can do the screening. If
So
somebody
for
comes in for a
example,
permit, you can do
If a
that.
convicted felon, potentially child molester, could set up right next door to a school,
That's correct,
and we couldn't do anything about it.
under the new
Under the
bill.
new-
So
Who came up with this idea?
I don't know who did 635.
Wiener?
No, he doesn't tend to get into sidewalk vending. But it's obviously, it's an issue where, again, as I said, some good-hearted thought, where they're hoping to get people who don't have a lot of options to at least have some way to make money, but it's going the wrong direction. And so potentially something for you to contact your legislators about and urge a no vote on that one in order to deal with some of those issues. That's my report. Any questions, I'm happy to take them. Otherwise, we'll have another one in 2 weeks.
Any questions for him?
No,
Nope.
I do, but save them for another time.
Okay. We move to item 13, council reports regarding ad hoc or standing committee meetings. Do we have any? Tom?
I had, I just wanted to let everyone know that Mayor Pro Tem Mann and I will be interviewing potential commissioners on Friday.
Good.
We have a number of interviews set for Friday afternoon, and I'm sure we'll be able to report back on that probably at the next meeting.
How many applicants did we have?
I don't remember. Peggy, do you remember how many we had? I think 4 new ones, maybe? 4 new applicants? Oh, no, 4 or 5, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Mayor,
else?
I don't know if you're ready yet or if you want to hold on a little while longer just in case, but at some point in the next 2 or 3 meetings, you probably want to look at dissolving H, the Live Oak Park Playground signage ad hoc.
Oh, okay. I think we could do that now,
Yeah.
can we just do that now? Okay. All right. Item 14, council item separate from the city manager's regular agenda. Councilmember Yu?
Nothing to add.
Councilmember Chin?
I'll just report that I attended a Los Angeles Transportation Forum hosted by UCLA Institute of Transportation Studies. Metro sent me as part of my service on the San Gabriel Valley Service Council. And the title of the forum is called Mega Events, Major Opportunities, with an eye towards the Olympic. So I'm very happy to hear from our city manager that our director of Parks and Recs, Adam Matsumoto, has been involved in meetings. Hope to bring a little bit of that Olympic magic in Temple City, whether it be in the form of, and this is what I learned from the seminar, in Paris, they have these fan zones that would engage local community through either transit or creating local experiences, such as connecting with youth sports and figuring out some type of a community viewing or community participation. And so while we don't have any existing infrastructure or facilities that are on the list of Olympic Games, but I think our proximity to some of the games that are nearby, as well as our wonderful school districts' new projects, could present some opportunities for various teams that want practice fields in this area. So I just want to thank city staff and encourage that process to continue.
Thank you. Councilmember Chavez?
I don't really have anything other than a question. I know some of us attended the Contract Cities conference this past week. Was there any, and I believe Sheriff Luna was one of the speakers. Did anybody, any takeaways from that maybe? Or if you were going to, I don't know if you were going to report on it. Was there anything new that we haven't already, that we already know?
I can report on I think the most eventful speech was the DA's breakfast
Hockman
address.
was there too, I think.
Yeah, the DA, our
Does he
district
get along
attorney
with
Hockman.
Luna? Does he get along with Luna? I don't know.
Yeah,
Do they get along?
they have a collaborative working relationship,
Okay,
but
good.
with regards to the Care First, Jail Last care campus that the Board of Supervisors has been talking to replace Men's Central Jail, it created quite a stir in the audience.
Wait, I didn't hear that. They want to replace Men's Central Jail with what?
With a campus that would allow for mental health treatment as well as other services to be
Interesting.
provided to
Yeah.
inmates.
In the same area where it's at?
There were a number of different, well, I know.
Did people like fall over after they heard that, or?
Can't talk about that, man.
All right.
Interesting.
What I know of is what's been reported in the news, and there was some very passionate discussion on the issue between the district attorney and one of the member of the Board of Supervisors, with all hundreds of local officials in the audience witnessing that. So I think definitely there are some disagreements in terms of the philosophy of how of the direction of, well, one, criminal justice and what public safety, how that is handled in the city, in the county, but two, in terms of facility planning and its relationship with individual cities. I think there's some major disagreements between different groups, but in that room, it was a good environment because it was not just those issues being brought up, but I think there's some productive conversation that was had after that exchange.
Okay.
Thank you.
William?
Nothing else from
Tom?
No, that's it. Thank you.
I guess I'll segue off of Councilmember Chen's comments. This year's Contract Cities sessions were invigorating due to the interesting dynamics of some of the speakers. I think one of the things that we as a council had been asking our captain and our deputies about is the impacts of like Proposition 36, right? And I know we as a city, our Temple Station is tracking that. So it was interesting to kind of hear the DA's perspective on how that has impacted sort of their approach. And granted, we all know the current DA's approach is very different from their predecessor. One of the key takeaways I took from his session was I think there's a stronger collaboration and alignment between law enforcement and the DA's office. So that was something he really kind of drove home on.
Who did that, Hockman?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So from that perspective, there's a lot more alignment in upholding and enforcing the law, right? So you have, his message was, law enforcement, do your thing, make your arrests, and know that there is a DA behind you who's going to see the process through if there's a legal basis for it, right? And then the second part that I thought was interesting was this discussion about how that's impacting the jail population, right? And that kind of dovetailed into this topic of Men's Central Jail. Was there is an uptick in the number of inmates being housed just on a countywide basis. And so this idea of Men's Central Jails or just jails in general becomes a hot topic because there's so many different opinions on how to handle that matter. And then I thought it was interesting that the subsequent panel, well, it was intended to be a panel, but it kind of turned into Sheriff Luna deferring to, I think, the Undersheriff Tokar. And she provided a pretty, at least from my perspective, an insightful presentation on what our deputies contend with on a day-to-day basis inside the jails. It was eye-opening because there's footage that you normally don't just see. I mean, you have deputies being attacked, ambushed. You know, it's kind of very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's heartbreaking, and it also makes you kind of, you know, we talk about our sworn officers putting their lives on the line, and here's video evidence of that happening, right? So I think that's why there's so much controversy, is that a lot of times people don't seem to understand what's happening inside the jails. And here our law enforcement partners are telling us the very realities they deal with on a daily basis. And to Sheriff Luna's credit, he had every deputy's back, in my opinion, in saying, hey, look at what is the reality on the ground. So if you just close one facility, what is really the practical, pragmatic impact on the county as a whole, right? It's not just one jail, it's the entire kind of Los Angeles region. So I thought it was informative. I took a lot away from it. I appreciated California Contract Cities for putting that together. To me, it shows that they are very aware of what the important issues are to members of contract cities, because I know everyone was paying attention. Nobody was chatting, because it was a very, very kind of serious, kind of informative presentation. So I very much appreciate that. On a brighter note, it was a great conference. Kudos to the Contract Cities Association. Some of you might know, I think this is one where a lot of us try to attend every year. It's a great way to kind of catch up with some of our colleagues from the adjacent cities that maybe we don't normally get a chance to catch up on. And it was one of the, I guess, coolest May weather.
It's beautiful, 86 degrees.
Yeah, it wasn't burning hot outside. So, yeah, overall, a very productive conference.
I remember one year driving down there, got there about 10:30 at night, and it was, I think, 95 degrees outside. It can get warm.
And there was a breeze, so that helped too.
Yeah, right. Good. Thank you for sharing that.
I think one of the things that is interesting also about the discussions with the sheriff and the problems with the jail is that it's you know, you don't have a lot of people running to become deputies. And there's a requirement that you have to serve 2 years in the jail before you can go out and do what you maybe have more of an interest in doing, policing work. And so I think that's going to continue to be a challenge, and they're going to need to really look at revamping the jail system before I think more people decide to look at that as a career also. I think they go hand in hand. But anyway, I don't have anything else. I think Tom and I are headed to Utah for a JPIA conference before our next council meeting. Is that right?
Yep.
Yes. And we're going to go to item 15, additional public comments on items not listed on the agenda. Anyone? No? Okay, close public comment. And with that, we are adjourned. So thank you.